Ready, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order.
First thing, Mr. Chairman, is a motion to have Linda and Brian participate remotely.
Okay, do we do the suspension of rules or just?
We don't need to do that anymore
Okay.
for this committee.
I need a motion and a second to let Linda and Brian call in. Ms. Blair, Rob, okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Okay, next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion for that? Sharon, second. Eden, okay. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carried unanimous. Okay, we're on to informational items. PCAP's monthly report.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions, as is Shauna, if you have any, for the report from Becky that's in the packet. If you have any questions that we can't answer, we'll relay those back to Becky and we'll get a report back for you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Any questions? Okay, moving on. Oh, Steve, go ahead.
Just, I guess I want to ask a general question, and maybe you can answer that for Becky, is how is, looking at her numbers, obviously the number of intakes have gone down, makes sense, but a lot of the field calls is still pretty strong. Has she been able to handle the demand and service for field calls accordingly? Any concerns or questions around it?
We are managing those. It's something that I know Shauna is looking at. Shauna, anything you want to add?
Oh, there we go. It looked like it was on. I think I need my eyes checked.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Shauna.
Okay, thanks, Linda. In order to accommodate the current workload associated with those and kind of manage operationally, they did restructure their on-call hours in terms of service calls. So instead of having someone on the street until 9 p.m., they're now on the street until 8 p.m., and then they're operating through on-call. And that was based upon the bulk of the timing of the majority of those calls, so that way they could run the right number of officers on the street in those municipalities. So she did make a few slight operational tweaks in order to accommodate those, but so far they're doing well.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Moving on, we'll go to the ETSB. David?
Mr. Chairman, the new 911 center construction is in full swing at Peoria and Bartonville, and one of the two centers should be done around the end of the year, and the other center should be done somewhere around the end of February. So that's moving along very well. I'd also like to introduce our new 911 coordinator, Jody Noe. She just started. This is her third week. So if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Welcome to this. Any questions for Dave? Any questions? Okay. We'll move on to the EMA.
Mr. Marks is on jury duty. He's actually, I believe, got picked for a trial. So if the committee does have any questions, we'll relay those back to Jason and get a report back for you.
Any questions for the EMA? All right, moving on. The Public Defender report. Nate?
Nate is in court and can't be here today. His report is in the packet. His first assistant, Kevin Lowe, is in the audience. So if you have questions, Kevin can try and answer them, or he'll relay those back to Nate, and Nate will respond.
Any questions? Steve, do you have any?
Kind of a similar question I ask about every other month just during this COVID is resource. Do we have enough resources, and with the case backload for the public defender, are we managing okay? Just trying to get a read on backlog and resources you have available and able to meet the demand.
Hello? Can you hear me okay? Great. That's a wonderful question, and I know that Nate would be better position to answer that. I can say generally that just like everybody else, a lot of other divisions and departments, we've had a backlog simply because the courts, they shut down for a while. They shut down. We didn't have any jury trials. We had very few negotiated pleas going on. Personally, my caseload went up probably about 20% just because I had the inability to close out cases. And of course, new cases keep rolling in. As far as do we have the resources, adequate resources to address that? Once again, I think Nate would be a better positioned to speak to that issue. I know we're going to be doing some catch up along the way, but I feel good about it personally from my position, and I'm the first assistant of the office. So, but I'll pass that on to Nate, and hopefully we'll have a better detailed answer for you.
Just want to make sure that we don't miss, a need or demand going forward that we could pick up now. But it sounds, if there's something that's needed, I'd ask you to consider it, bring it forward to our chairman, anything around that topic. But thank you for the update.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving on, we'll go to the resolutions. The first one's the ILEAS vehicle agreement for Lenco Bearcat. May I have a motion to put it on the floor? Thanks, Phil.
So moved.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Okay. Scott, who's taking?
Sheriff is going to take this one.
Okay, Sheriff, welcome.
Thank you. This is basically an upgrade. Back in 2006, ILEAS, which we are the lead agency for the downstate team, provided us with a Bearcat, which is an armored vehicle that's used in tactical situations. It's been used many, many times. So what they are doing is updating this version to the 2020 version. It's nearly a $700,000 product. So we're just getting an upgrade.
Any questions for the sheriff? Do we all get a ride in it, Sheriff? Just kidding.
It always ends up on Maxwell Road.
Okay. Eden?
So what's our cost for this? Anything? The county's cost?
Nothing.
Nothing.
This is just, it was a ILEAS appropriation. They provided us. ILEAS really started after September 11th, 9/11. This was federal funding that went down to the states. And being we are the regional headquarter team, actually Captain Middlemas behind me is the team commander for the region. This is equipment they provide us. The trade-off is it has to be utilized in critical situations by other agencies in the area. So if there's a need for it, we'll take it out.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimously. The next one is FY 2020 Illinois Law Enforcement Alarm System, ILEAS, overtime appropriation. Sheriff, are you taking that one too?
You ready?
Okay, go ahead. Oh, excuse me. Can I have a motion to put on the floor? Okay. Phil, thank you. Second. Rob? Okay. Now, Sheriff.
This is just our annual appropriation from ILEAS that covers the overtime for training expenses throughout the year. If you look from a historical perspective, this is down considered to years past. However, it's directly related to COVID because there has been less practices this year because of the pandemic.
Can you tell us how much money that is, Sheriff? Is it 20,000?
Right around 20,000.
Okay, and that's to pay for the
Typically,
overtime.
it's years past, it's usually around 40,000, so it's about cut in half. However, again, it's just related to the inability to have practices to the extent we need to.
And that's a reimbursement for us, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any questions for the sheriff on this? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Go ahead, Phil.
This doesn't involve the annual budget change or anything like that, does it? Do we have to have a supermajority, Scott?
At the committee level, Mr. Salzer, a simple majority is necessary. At the full county board meeting, this will be characterized as a
Brian,
supermajority, as a budget amendment.
Left.
That answer your question, Phil? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we're to Steve, go ahead. Pardon? Yes, we're at miscellaneous now. Do you have something?
Yeah, I've got, I guess, two topics, just ask for informational. I've asked the sheriff if he could give us an update on the jail and the burden that we are seeing as far as other agencies putting burden on his resources. So I'd like to ask the sheriff to have permission to present.
That'd be great. Sheriff?
Thank you. I'll start by, it's been a long, hard 5 months. It's been hard. Something I've never seen in my 26 years, and there were certain days that were harder than others. However, I'm very optimistic about the future. We did get some relief here in the last week with Illinois Department of Corrections, where we started some transfers off-site. And that's been a critical piece since March. It's affected everyone. It's affected the public defender's office because it's really put a cog in the entire system when we don't have that movement. So we were able to get 18 off. We still have over 40 to get transferred. So that has caused us to open different housing units. Obviously, with the health pandemic and under CDC guidelines, there's a lot of things from a historical perspective we're not allowed to do. Double bunk for one. Another piece that's I wasn't expecting, and it makes sense why it happened, but it's really affected operations, is inmate workers, trustees. We put a halt working with the chief judge and the state's attorney for bringing convicted offenders into the facility. That is our core work group. That's dietary, that's laundry, that's outside. Our ecology group that does so many things for not just our office but other offices. Janitorial services. They're gone. We're down to very, very few trustees, which has related in us. We have to now do, for example, all food services are done off-site and they're catered in. There's additional costs that come with that. Same thing with laundry. We don't have anyone to do laundry, so we've done an agreement with a local laundromat that's doing our laundry, and they bring it back out. Then we have resources to fold it and stack it and move it. But this is back in March or April. This is something I never even thought of. Just by design, it's hurt us, and it will take months. Even if we opened up the full bore, it'll take months to replenish that work group, and you just don't realize how critical those jobs are. Not just for operations, but for cost savings as well. Fortunately, a lot of these costs will probably be covered under either some type of appropriation, maybe the CARES Act. So we're tracking all the expenditures towards this. But kind of like Mr. Lowe just said, just how all this is slowed down, and it's really, I've described it as a water balloon. It just keeps building and building and building, and there's no relief. And additionally impacted by what's happened over the summer, there's been a lot of arrests made. So I'll go back to what I first said. I'm optimistic. Getting just even 18 of these detainees off site last week, that helped us. If we can get another 12 to 15, we'll be in a position where I can shut down one of these housing units that we had to open up. And that helps us with staffing as well, so you don't need as many staff. One housing unit takes 5.41 FTEs to manage. 24/7, relief factor, all that's figured in there. So Obviously, we're still under designation for an outbreak facility. Working hand in hand with Monica and Katie. We meet twice a week where we discuss jail operations because of this designation status. The good news is once we had that initial 39, we still spot test every week. We haven't had any other positives, staff included. Up until today, I just found out we have another staff member that we're kind of working with now to see what happened. But we've had a couple weeks gap where we haven't had any increase, especially in the inmate population. But it's really hard to manage because you don't know where the source point comes from. We've since March, we've had protocol in place where everyone that comes in for 14 days, they're segregated. Then we move them to general population. However, there's still, you always have the concern of employees coming into that housing unit, work assignments, those that do work inside the jail, any movement inside the facility where you could possibly be with somebody else, coming to court, sitting next to a public defender or a paid attorney. You don't know what the history is there. So this is something that we're going to continue to monitor. We had the meeting this morning. Obviously, we're going right into flu season too, where we're taking some considerations. So even though that there has been some pressure released, we're going to be very slow to open some things back up because I don't want to have that yo-yo effect going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So that's where we're at. Patrol's managing. I mean, obviously there's been an impact with cuts and everything else going on. There's a little what I think maybe the worst is over. I mean, I don't want to say that too loud, but there has been some relief here in the last week or so that's really assisted us. So trying to figure everything out. I say we opened the book of Revelations back in March, and we're just going through it chapter by chapter. And some days it feels like that, but we have seen some relief, which is really helping us.
Okay. Well, thank you for that update, and thank you for you and your team. I know it's a team effort, everyone in your organization out there working this, so appreciate the work and the effort.
Even Randy?
Yeah, even Randy. We'll give Randy credit. So, but we love you, Randy. But no, thanks for that.
While we got the sheriff up here, is there any other questions from any of the other board members? Sheriff, I was wondering, they've talked about having, instead of the inmates come into the courthouse for hearings and that, to do a video. With this, can that be done so you don't have to worry about the exposure for the inmates, or is that not legal yet?
We're doing, and again, we're working hand in hand with Judge Gelfellen and the state's attorney to move forward on how to manage courts. They're doing as many video conferences as they can. But I think the reality is, though, that is part of the cog where you sometimes need that face-to-face interaction with your defense counsel to maybe get a plea bargain and not kick the can down the road farther. So we understand that. And, I personally at the point that we just need to keep the processes going, because if not, it's just impacting it so much more. But we have to be safe about it. We have to be smart. So the rule is right now we're looking at these on an individual basis. If there's a reason, a sign or a symptom before court in the morning, we're going to have that conversation with the stakeholders that need to know, and we'll make a decision on an individual basis. I think that's the best way to manage this right now. And you can have the best policy in the world, but there's going to be so many outliers involved. So it's just communication. And I will say that's something that I've seen over the last 5 months, the network where these different stakeholders in the criminal justice systems are collectively working together. So I have to applaud everyone for their efforts on that.
Well, thank you. I didn't realize you were doing all all that already. And once again, I want to thank you, like what Steve said, for all that you and your staff do, and the whole.
Appreciate
It's
it.
nice to know that, as they call it, Team Peoria is working well together, and we're trying to overcome this. So thank you again,
Thank you.
Steve.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have one more miscellaneous update if possible. This would be tied to the court systems. I'm going to probably ask Ms. Parker if she would give us maybe a quick update on court administration, how the court systems have handled this. I don't know, Renee, would you be willing to give us an update on, from a court administration side, any of the things that you want to share with us, positive, struggles? It's yours. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I think for the courts, this has been a very difficult process, just like for everyone. Is it okay if I take this? I can't talk with this mask on. It has been a difficult time for us all, as the sheriff just mentioned, but it is good that we've had such a collaborative effort with all the stakeholders, with the sheriff, with the health department, with Scott, representing the county. It's made it a lot easier. We've had such a great group of collaborative team members, working through the processes. I think one thing that I would like to speak to today and just say that for the court's perspective, we were in such a good position for remote processes. I think all across the country, everyone was grappling with how they were going to conduct proceedings remotely. And as you just mentioned, the remote proceedings between the jail and the courts, so that we can have those video arraignments and not transfer inmates, is critical to that. And so we already had that infrastructure in place. We've been using it for years, and we just bumped it up and use it even more than what we would normally use it. So with that, in addition to Department of Corrections, we've connected with those departments, but that was done prior to the pandemic, so we were already doing those things. In addition to that, we were already doing Zoom hearings. So we were in a good place. And then the courts in themselves, with our in-house IT division, has developed this, we worked through electronic processes with e-filing, but then we moved on to develop e-courts, which allows us to conduct our court proceedings electronically. So if you can imagine, if you shut down the courts, you can still function even though the judges aren't in the courthouse. We can all remote into that system and still conduct court proceedings, enter orders as needed, which was critical during this time. So I just think that that's a good positive, that Peoria County was really way ahead of the game.
Okay. No, thank you for that update. And I guess, highlight, Ms. Parker's comments about, the benefits, some of the things we've invested in as a county in technologies, e-courts. We didn't obviously predict that we were going to have a pandemic to deal with. But again, this was some forethought, things that were done. I think it's a good thing to highlight to show some of the things we have done as a county in the court systems to be better prepared to serve the public and do our work. But thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to have two more updates.
Well, thank you for asking, Steve. I'm sure all of us learned something, and then our viewers on Facebook can hear it also. And we need to tout what we are doing right and let people know that things are going well here in Peoria County. Any other miscellaneous? Moving on to announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? If not, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Linda Daly.
Left.